over their view of him from Harvey on.
It took a jury less than 3 hours to convict Richard Lyon of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison.
I worked lots of cases like this, and the question was always, why not just a divorce?
You know, they may be intelligent, but they're criminally stupid. And for good reason. And thank God they are, because we couldn't catch them.
It was hard for me to believe that he had actually killed his wife. And it had just finally broken down based on the shape of an F, an L, and an R, and just scratchings on a piece of paper.
There was a shooting in an upscale neighborhood in Oklahoma City. Ballistics identified the use of 2 different guns, which meant at least 2 shooters. These small marks on a shotgun shell, some singed fibers, and a crime reconstruction revealed a plot more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Rob called his best friend.
Rob had called my house around 5:30, telling me how hurried he'd been all day, and he was looking forward to getting the side of the body, one to the left side of the body. They actually occurred from 2 different locations. So that also tells us that 2 shooters is a possibility.
Brenda Andrews suffered a gunshot wound and was rushed to the hospital.
Our wound is a fatty portion of that Rob.
The bullet that hit Brenda went through her arm and lodged in the wall of the garage. It was from a .22 caliber pistol. Police found a spent 16-gauge shotgun shell on the roof of Brenda's van, an indication there were 2 different weapons used in the attack. The empty cans on the garage floor indicated Rob saw the gunman and grabbed the bag of empty cans as a shield.
As the second gunshot wound is about being inflicted on him, he is looking up and looking at the face of his bullet.
The motive apparently wasn't robbery.
His wallet was not taken. In fact, some of the pellets from the shotgun went through his wallet.
The Andrews' 2 children were upstairs in their rooms unharmed. The attack had all the earmarks of an execution. Yet no one could think of a reason why Robert Andrew would be targeted for murder. With no motive, no leads, and no description of the killers, investigators hoped the autopsy would provide the clues they needed. News of Rob Andrews' execution-style murder was a shock to the residents of Oklahoma City, since crimes like this were extremely uncommon.
Rob and Brenda were a loving couple. They appeared to be. The picture showed the perfect family, the smiling, happy, loving couple with these 2 great little kids.
The couple were active members of their church. Brenda taught Sunday school, and Rob performed missionary work in South America. Early in the investigation, police learned there had been a prior attempt on Rob's life. Just 1 month earlier, Rob called police to report someone had tampered with his car.
Oklahoma City Police Department.
Hi there, I'd like to report a crime. My brake lines have been cut. That sounds like attempted murder, don't you think?
A few hours later, Rob was getting his brakes fixed when he received a call from the hospital. The caller said his wife Brenda was critically injured in a car accident and suggested that he come to the hospital right away.
The man's voice saying that his wife is in the hospital about 30 miles away, that she needs him and he needs to get down there just as fast as he can.
Now suspicious, Rob called the hospital back and learned the previous call was a hoax. Apparently the same person who cut Rob's brake line wanted him to race to the hospital.
He took it as an attempt on his life. He realized that in fact he was being set up to drive down there at a high rate of speed and hopefully get into an accident. That's the obvious conclusion.
Several days after Rob's murder, his next-door neighbors returned home from vacation and realized someone had broken into their home.
we unpacked our suitcases and started putting things away. When I opened my closet door, I discovered that a little shoe rack that I'd had was no longer there. Then we decided to look around the other bedrooms. That's when we discovered he spent shotgun shell in one of the bedrooms.
The shell was from a 16-gauge shotgun. It was immediately sent to the forensics lab for testing. An analyst placed it under a microscope to compare it to the 16-gauge shotgun shell found in the Andrews garage. He looked specifically at the brass casings at the base of the shells. When casings are ejected, each gun creates a unique mark on the brass.
Depending on the amount of correspondence and the preponderance of the matching striations, the examiner can come to the conclusion as to whether these were fired by the same fireman.
There was no doubt. Both shells were fired from the same gun. Also in the neighbor's attic, police found several unused .22 caliber bullets, the same as those used in the second gun in the murder.
It was just basically accidentally.
Just might need some
dropped
water.
along the way. They didn't
Gladly I keep things on
what they were
standby.
allowing someone to fall through.
This suggested that the killers hid in the neighbor's home after the murder so they could make a clean getaway later.
Apparently someone went up in that attic and they were either trying to climb up in the master closet access, or they came down and landed on that shoe rack and broke it to pieces. It wasn't sturdy enough to hold them, and so then they tried to hide evidence of that. My brother's evil attempt by putting it under the bed.
And since the neighbor's home had no signs of forced entry, it meant one of two things. Either the killers were professionals, or they had a key. With no solid leads, police asked themselves who would benefit most from Rob Andrews' murder. Rob's friends told police that his wife Brenda had the most
My
to
head
gain.
thick as hell.
We found that marriage
Ooh, straight gonna
rocky
need
off
another
We got some weed that's laying around this room.
of separation. And we also found that when Andrew was involved in several taking out of affairs.
Got some weed laying around.
Mr. Andrew was
Like
convinced
2
at
days.
this point that his insurance salesman, Mr. Pavard, and his wife were having an affair.
48-year-old James Pavard taught Sunday school with Brenda,
This one is, yep.
and they flaunted
Too bad.
their relationship even
Like
in
these
front
two
of
empties.
Rob's children.
See?
James and Brenda had a very
Just that.
interesting relationship. I mean, even prior to Rob's death, the two of them went on a vacation together down to
How you gonna rub it on the bed? You trying to boost the bed, man?
Any husband
I did.
would
I didn't even
willingly
mention.
just say okay to his wife going down to Mexico with a stranger and taking us into it.
Just a few months before his murder, Rob demanded that Brenda end her affair with Pavard. Brenda refused and filed for divorce. Rob immediately changed the beneficiary of his $800,000 life insurance policy.
Mr. Andrew made the beneficiary, I think his brother, for the benefit of the children. Since the children were minors, he had to have an adult as the actual named beneficiary, as a trustee of that money.
But after Rob's death, police were surprised to learn that Brenda was again the sole beneficiary.
Ooh, we getting some color
Police
pill.
were immediately suspicious, and they arranged for a handwriting expert, David Parrott, to authenticate Rob Andrews' signature on the insurance policy.
A signature is produced with
Well,
style
one up.
and speed. It's the thing that you probably write the most.
I
in
found
your
one.
entire life. In my analysis, I look at
Still
13
one missing.
years of Rob Andrews'
Oh, yeah.
handwriting.
It's
in
bleaching.
writing the
I feel it.
signatures. 136 signatures.
Not surprisingly, it was clear that Rob Andrews' signatures changed over the years.
Over time, Rob Andrews' signature had become more ornate, more artistic.
And 2.5 years before his death, Rob added an extra element to his signature.
It was in the bottom right-hand corner of his signature. I then began looking at signature after signature after signature, and that fish was there.
This was a Christian symbol, the ichthus. Rob added it to his signature as a sign of his faith. But it wasn't on the change of beneficiary form.
I know that symbol is very significant because he repeatedly used it in the more formalized signatures that he wrote, such as in business documents. And that symbol was not in the question document.
And there was another discrepancy in the life insurance policy signature.
Rob Andrew had a characteristic of connecting the N and the D in the last name Andrew.
But it wasn't signed that way on the insurance form. So Parrott concluded it was a forgery, but he was unable to determine the identity of the forger. Police knew that Brenda Andrew had the motive to make sure she was the beneficiary of her husband's $800,000 life insurance policy, and her lover, James Pavatt, had the opportunity. He was the life insurance agent who sold the policy. Police now suspected Brenda may have been involved in her husband's
Right.
murder.
When you realize your hair is longer than what you thought it was?
Closer look at the photographs of her wound and the bullet hole in her sweater.
You hear me?
They found
You realize your hair is
black
longer than you thought it
brains and
was?
gunshot residue.
It's taking
around both.
more bleach now to do
It was
it.
actually the unburned and partially burned powder and soot and hot gases that exit the barrel right
It's
behind
damn
the
sure it's
projectile.
taking almost all of
Using
this.
an
And I'm
identical
like,
gun.
look, I'm almost done.
Investigators ran tests to recreate the
Mm-mm.
gunshot residue
Up my
patterns.
clothes.
And my observations of those patterns and of the sweater and of her wound allowed me to conclude that she was shot at somewhere between actual contact and approximately 2 inches away from her arm.
This contradicted Brenda's statement that she was shot by someone 15 to 20 feet away. Police now knew that Brenda Andrew was involved in Rob's murder, but was she the killer?
That shit.
What? The bleach?
Hell yeah.
To find out what role, if any, Brenda Andrew played in her husband's murder, investigators sent her bloodstained clothing to Tom Bevel, an expert on blood spatter analysis. Bevel noticed that
Sorry.
many of the blood stains on
How you
her
think yours about to
jeans
smell?
had an elongated shape, consistent with blood dripping from her arm onto her pants.
We have some low velocity blood drips. That would be blood that is breaking away primarily due to gravity, dripping down onto the jeans.
DNA tests confirmed this blood was Brenda's. But Bevel also found mist-like blood spatter on Brenda's jeans below the knee, which had penetrated deep into the fabric.
It is from a high velocity occurrence, such as a gunshot, in this case, multiple gunshot pellets, that has spattered the blood traveling back from him, referred to as back spattering, and subsequently landing on her clothing.
DNA tests confirmed that this was Rob's blood. This proved that Brenda was standing only a few feet away from Rob when he was killed.
The back spatter on the pants. I think that gave us that one bit of evidence we
Alright.
needed
We kind of
in
covered
order
now.
to put that gun in Miss Andrews'
Now it's time
hand.
to wash. Wash your hands.
Prosecutors believe Brenda planned her husband's murder for months. She may have forged Rob's signature on the life insurance policy, making her the beneficiary. Her first attempt
We all covered
on
all the way
Rob's
around?
life involved cutting Rob's brake lines.
Yeah, all the
Police
stuff.
believe it was
Turn
James
around.
Pavatt who called Rob with the fake story that Brenda
Gotta get right
was in
here a little
critical
bit.
condition at the hospital. When that didn't work, the couple devised
I'm
an
about to
elaborate
cover the shit
shooting
anyway.
scenario. They planned to kill Rob when he came to pick up the children for the holiday weekend. On the night of the murder, Pavatt hid behind the van in the garage. When they heard Rob's car, they set the plan in motion.
All right. I think we're covered
Rob
here.
walked into the garage expecting
Time to
see
wash
the
the
children.
fingers.
Instead, Brenda asked him to fix the homeowner's son walk into the house to pick up his parents' mail. Fortunately, the man didn't go upstairs.
Family Dollar, you coming in handy today?
Two. Investigators never found the murder weapon, but they did find some important information.
During our investigation, we also found that Mr. Provide had purchased a 22 caliber pistol at a local gun store with the use of a credit card about a month before the homicide.
Everything was a piece of a puzzle. All of those little things out there by themselves meant nothing. But when you started laying it all out, putting the pieces together, making the matches, it just started pointing. There's no way this woman couldn't have been involved.
Brenda Andrew and James Pavot were both charged with first-degree murder and were tried separately. Pavot's trial was first.
We, the jury, having heretofore found the defendant, James Dwight Pavot, guilty of murder in the first degree, seeks his punishment at death.
In Brenda's trial, prosecutors portrayed her as a heartless sociopath. The jury saw photos of her vacationing with Pavot and the children while she was married to Rob. They also heard the messages Brenda left on Rob's telephone answering machine, in which she belittled Rob for his parenting skills and other perceived slights.
Hey, it's Brenda. You halfway dad can't even return calls about your children. You ought to call me if you even care one little ounce. Oh, that's right, you don't. We've been able to figure that out.
And the jury also heard this call between Rob and Brenda's mother before the murder.
She does not like me. That makes it really hard to live there. I mean, I look at it, I just want to break out and cry because I love the girl so much, and I have loved her for a long, long time. And the one thing that I knew that Brenda liked was money.
Brenda Andrew was also convicted of first-degree murder. The forensic evidence was impossible to overcome.
We, the jury, held and sworn in the above household, to upon our oaths, that we to found the defendant, Brenda Peters, and guilty of murder in the first degree, fixed her punishment at death.
She is now the only woman on Oklahoma's death row.
I had 4 years to ponder, to think of why Brenda and Jim would take Rob Andrews' life as the life of another. And I understand how someone could be that mean or that evil and have so little regard for another person's life.
Prosecutors describe it as one of the most cold-blooded murders they've ever seen.
The complexity of the case was a problem. It's a hard case to talk about in a short amount of time. There's so many different pieces of evidence. But what we believe that any juror wants to hear is what happened at the key moment. The physical evidence will tell a story. And it's just simply up to the person that is trying to put this together to understand what the physical evidence is saying.
When a person is cremated, they usually destroys any evidence of foul play. At least that was the theory until a scientist in Texas found a way to test cremated remains, and in so doing, made forensic history.
That's why my jury off.
San Angelo, Texas, known for its oil, cotton fields, and extremely hot weather.
Getting real.
It's great country. There's a lot of rural area to it.
I don't even want to go over.
Olgie and Lita Nobles ran the town's air conditioning business, and they had no shortage of customers.
Oh no. These gloves ain't gonna work for my nails.
Perhaps it was the strain of both living and working together, but the two didn't always see eye to eye.
It was that kind of different relationship where there was love involved, but you couldn't tell it from the outside.
Mr. Noble had a real drinking problem, and they argued like cats and dogs.
At the age of 70, Olgie died after a lengthy illness. Shortly after the funeral, his wife Lita checked herself into a hospital. She hadn't been feeling well for weeks.
I just sick, just vomiting all the time. Just deathly sick in my stomach, and I just get weaker and weaker. That's where I couldn't walk.
Lita blamed the stress of her husband's death for her illness, but doctors found nothing wrong and released her. Within days, the nausea and vomiting returned, and Lita developed another symptom: numbness in her fingers and toes.
I woke up one night and I was so sick, and I got up, tried to get in the chair, and of course when I didn't hold it, I just went down the floor.
Lita went to the hospital once again. This time, doctors performed a whole battery of tests and found the problem. Lita had been poisoned.
Hey,
The
what
level
they
of
talking
arsenic
about?
in her system
Nothing but
was
people
3
getting poisoned.
times higher than a lethal dose.
You trying to tell us
I
something?
wonder who in the world it could
Watch
be.
people around you because they're poisoned.
Arsenic is a tasteless, odorless element used in rat poison.
Mm-mm.
Lita could think of only one person who could have done this: her husband, Olgie.
They loved each other, but it's one of those marriages that stayed rocky all the time. You know, they just fought back and forth all the time. She did say that he probably
That's
was
turning kind of quick.
Was it possible that Olgie poisoned his wife before he died?
I didn't think he had the nerve. I really didn't think the man had the nerve to do a thing like this.
To find out, scientists looked for evidence in her hair.
It turns out that hair, and in some cases toenails or fingernails, are good indicators of body lobes of certain elements.
Okay, first gotta get that off the skin. That's nothing but a stain. I see it now.
Since hair grows approximately 1/2 inch per month, and Lita's hair was 3 inches long, this gave scientists a 6-month timeline to see when Lita was poisoned. Each 1/2 inch piece of hair was tested with neutron activation analysis.
Neutron activation has some advantages, and one is that it is considered to be non-destructive. That is, solid samples can be irradiated directly without having to dissolve the sample in any way.
The results were surprising. Lita ingested a massive dose of arsenic in the month before Olgie died, but she ingested a second large dose in the month after his death.
They were able to conclude that she had had a large dose of arsenic in the time frame since her husband.
Ooh, look at the color.
Now investigators questioned whether Olgie too had been poisoned. Tests on Lita Noble's hair indicated she ingested large doses of arsenic in the month before and month after her husband's death. At one time, arsenic was an ingredient in rat poison, but it's no longer used for that purpose.
Some tissue.
Investigators looked in and around the
Yeah,
Noble's home for clues.
We took samples of the water, we took samples from the septic tank system, and we tested all different things in the house to be sure that we could positively
These
prove
gloves are just too much
that
for
they didn't
me.
get the poison from something that was in the house.
Looks right there.
I know.